Okay, let's call the meeting to order at, I think, 6:32. First item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the regular meeting held July 9th, 2019.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the July 9th meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item is the appointment to the Housing Authority. We had a resignation from the Board of Directors of the Deep River Housing Authority. The Board of the sitting board has advised that and recommended Astacia Cowell, who's a resident down there. It's the resident board member. They have 4 board members from outside, and then a resident also sits on the board. Astacia's been recommended by the director and the board to fill that role until a term to expire on February 1st, 2022. So if we can get a motion to...
I'll make a motion for Astacia Cowell, term to expire 2/1/22 for the Housing Authority.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, next is a discussion of a season pass, refund of a season pass to Deep River Landing. Back in April, a fellow who was going to get a mooring in the Deep River Harbor. The cost for that was the cost of a parking season pass for the parking. That's $300 for the season. Subsequent to purchasing the season pass, he got a mooring in another town that's closer to his home, so he does not need or want. He's turned the pass back in. He's asked if we could refund him any portion of that. It's really a month's worth of time that he didn't use. So,
And that cost how much?
it's $300.
300 again. Okay.
It's my inclination to just give him his money back. He never used it. It was just a matter of paperwork. So,
I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
okay, if you have a motion.
I'll make a motion that we refund the season pass to the gentleman.
Ray Drago.
Ray Drago for his Deep River Landing season pass.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The next item is Deep River Energy Upgrade. I'd like to table that. We'll stay in session tonight until at the Board of Finance meeting, and we can all talk about that together and any action we can take at the same time. And the next item is the discussion of exemption of horses from property taxation. Continuing that conversation that we've had for quite some time. I see some new faces. Are there anybody here who has anything to say who hasn't spoken yet or is inclined to say something that hasn't been said yet? Maybe certainly open to hearing it. No? Okay. I think my thinking on this, and we're 3 minds here, so we have to think it through, is that we had a good long conversation about this. We've done a bunch of research. We've learned some things that we didn't know. And I thought, and I still am of the mind, that we offered up a pretty reasonable and fair compromise to that. During all of the conversation after that was recommended by me, it was basically, an argument back and forth. I don't think that was received very well. And I interpreted at least a couple of responses that were that if we went the direction of the compromise proposal, that we would end up in court to test that. That to me, I'm not inclined at all to put the town in jeopardy of spending money on a lawsuit that I think we would win. But the cost of that lawsuit, I don't want to cost the town any more money, or certainly any of that jeopardy. So that puts us to the position that we do one or the other. We either exempt all or we don't exempt any. I think I stated last time that I'm not yet ready to exempt all the horses. I think that there's a short, and maybe it's not a lot of money, but when we're doing our budget from January to May, that money is money that we could be spending other places. So I don't have any inclination at this point to fully exempt horses. But the table is open for conversation as far as that goes.
So we're gonna make a decision tonight, or?
If I was to make a decision tonight, my decision is to not take any action. Which means to end the conversation.
Status
We're
quo.
status quo, we just stay status quo.
Jane's got her hand up over here.
I keep my horse in Killingworth, and I talked to the owner of the property, and he said that all the barns in town receive some kind of a letter, and he has to state what horses are, so there's a lot of paperwork.
Same that we have here, yeah, it's exactly the same as here.
How come I've never gotten a letter?
Do you keep your horse in Deep River?
They were here for quite a while. And they're here for a long
I
time.
don't know, maybe, I don't know. Was that horse reported? Did the tax assessor's office know that there was a horse there? I don't know,
Well,
John.
I think Robin said, yeah, I knew you had a horse, and then she,
When it was up off of Stevenstown, when you.
with
boarded
the
up there?
hazes.
At the hazes, yes.
And
They
Dick and
filed.
Griggs were there for many, many, many years.
Okay, I don't know.
Would it be possible to have an accounting of what the time between mailings and, Robin's time on the paperwork Millie's mailing out? So we can really, I know you're saying 4,500 at current value. As taxpayers, that's kind of public knowledge, right, as to what that accounting would be. Because I have a hard time, if that 4,500 is a gross number, what is the real revenue generated after Robin's time? I can't imagine that it's a quick process, and like you said, it's very cumbersome with all the paperwork. So I think everybody would benefit from seeing that accounting.
My guess is that, and I don't know what Jane was talking about, which is not unusual, but the question that I have is, the barn gets that documentation, and I think that's the same thing that we were talking about earlier this season, about the barns that board horses need to file paperwork that they are renting space, and that's a different
That's a
topic,
different
really.
issue, right?
Yes.
And that's what we were talking about prior to this conversation. As far as getting an accounting, I suppose at the end of the year, we can keep track of all of our hours and see how long how much time is spent on it.
Well, we don't track that now.
No.
There's not,
We track the hours that she works.
but there's
Just
no,
like we
there's
tracked
no
it.
breakdown.
Is there any difference for you sending and assessing or doing the assessment of horses versus assessing of cars and buildings and all that kind of stuff? There's 54 extra pieces of taxable property in town versus thousands.
Yes.
So it's not that much of a burden on the assessor's office, I would think.
Right, I would have a very difficult time quantifying how long it takes to bring 54 in. They go out in a mail merge, and we use a mailing service to produce all of those. Any additional accounts are done from our office the first year out, but with all businesses, they're into one lump. We have 657 personal property accounts.
I just, from a business perspective, I just look at it and go, if there's obviously concern on both sides. And I understand some of the apprehension on yours, but if you really start to look at, from an accounting standpoint and a business standpoint, forget about from an accounting standpoint and a business standpoint, how does that, we take a relatively small number, but without really knowing that, how do we say, oh, well, this is it's not gross, or it's not net, it's a gross number.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a client that bought a horse with me, and he's a car dealer. And he said, well, what's the blue book on this horse? And I said, there is no blue book. And when it comes to cars or property, there's a blue book value. I mean, people might go a little above or a little below, but there's a blue book. And I tried to explain this, there is no blue book for horses. That horse could be worth, as my vet once said, if it's breathing and it's relatively sound, it's $4 grand. but that's not how horses work. You could have a $4,000 horse, and if somebody wants it bad enough, they're gonna spend 50. What's it worth? 4? There is no blue book on horses.
And I think-
That's my concern.
And I think, I'll just chime in, we've heard that since, I've been on the board now for 3 months, and every regular scheduled Board of Finance meeting, or Board of Selectmen meeting, this has been on there. And that topic has been brought up, and it was pointed out by Robin and myself at that point that we trust the horse owner to supply the value of the horse. They come up with a value at some point, it's submitted to her, and she takes that value and runs with it. We're not assessing, we're not evaluating, we're not questioning. We're taking the horse value from the person that submits it to her, and we run with that value. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Just trust me, if I can take a
So-
$5,000 horse and sell it for 50, I'm a happy camper.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But technically, the blue book
And
is
if
gonna
you,
be
if
about
if a
5.
horse owner says and submits it to her that it's worth $5,000, that's what it's taxed on. We don't question that, there is no blue book, there is no horse, you know, I mean, there isn't, and we trust
So if you're not
what is
questioning
submitted
us,
to
then
us.
every horse in Deep River is worth 5,000.
Well,
That's,
right
right now,
now,
that's absolutely the
there
case.
isn't a horse in the town of Deep River that's valued over,
Look at,
there is no.
look at,
A lot of free
Well,
horses.
the problem with horses is that they really truly can be worth, really truly worth $60,000 one day, and they can really truly be
yep, that's right.
$1,000 the
Yep.
And I would expect that most people are gonna be honest about the value of what they own. If that's not the case, then there are tools available so we can audit and look for different information. We don't generally, in the past, we have not generally done that.
I guess that's what
Go
we're
ahead.
worried about, is it's
I guess that's
worth
what-
your time to do that check.
Here's what I'm going to suggest. I understand, we've heard this argument, we've had this discussion, as Jim said, for a long time. We've heard this argument. I'll come back to you in one second. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Well, I was
a new
gonna say,
voice.
Okay, someone, maybe got a $5,000 horse, the horse gets sick, you come back to Robin and say, okay, the horse is worth $500. Are you gonna accept that? Or you're gonna go, wait a minute, we're not gonna devalue that horse? And we get into, so who's gonna audit this?
It's easy.
How's this
It's
really gonna
easy.
work? It's not like cars where there's a database, you can say it's worth X or Y.
It's easy as pie, to me, as far as I'm concerned. There's documentation out there that you can provide that says this horse was worth this, it's not worth this anymore. It's simple. We're not trying to make $1 million off of you. You're not trying to make $1 million off of us. It's just, we're in a spot where I feel like I was painted into a corner. I have to make a decision. That's my choice. There are 2 other voices up here. My suggestion is that we all, everybody in this room who feels as strongly as you all do, that you put your focus on your legislators. We are not in the minority in this decision, and we are not even close to the minority in this decision. If the state legislature felt as if this was something that should be done, the state legislator would do it. And I think that there are places, there are people, you have Norm Needleman is your state senator, you've got Christine Palm as your state representative, and I know that there are others that feel the same way. I would suggest you push it through that way. But that's from me, I'm not,
I have talked to Norm Needleman
Yep.
through the, it's high technology.
Yep.
And I asked him about what he felt about the taxation of horses, and he said that, and I guess he must have talked to you because he automatically went right to
He'd read the
Killingworth, saying it's, 20,000, if it's gonna be a prize horse, it needs to be taxed. If it's a workhorse or a pet, it doesn't need to be taxed. So I said, well, if Essex doesn't have that, I think that Deep River should be like that. And he says, well, we don't have enough horses.
They only have 2, from as far as we know, they only have 2 horses in the town of Essex, so it's probably not worth it for Essex.
It's probably a good thing. I mean, it's a really slow wheel that turns from the 169 total, whatever it was, towns. Since 2014, 30 of them have come over to the non-tax thing. I'm not gonna talk much more about it, but my final statement is that, or maybe not the final statement, is that I really think that we need to get rid of it. I mean, there's a lot of people here, we gave you petitions with a couple hundred names on them that would like to see it go away. There's still, a lot of people wanna come here. I know there's people in this room that have horses in this town that don't live here. And, you know, they still put a ton of money into this town,
Mhm.
so
I know.
it's like, we need to get people involved. So if I can get half a dozen kids to come ride on weekends through the summer, you know, we're really busy right now as Stan and Kevin are, and other people in the same position. So, yeah, it would make a difference to some people to find out that their horse is gonna be taxed, so that's just an extra burden on them. But I understand what you're gonna say, but I think that, you know, in my vote, and I think we should get rid of the tax. I mean, this is a tax that came back from what, the early 1900s, 1800s, when they had horses going up and down the streets and people were having to shovel manure and all that stuff that way. So yeah, that was a transportation thing. Well,
Mhm.
Hey, Jack, we still have to shovel north.
I graduated. So I mean, it's like we need to, I think that we need to step up and get out of this, you know? It's,
Yeah.
and that's, you know, there's a lot of people here, and they're, you know, they'll come here every single time we have a meeting like this, so.
Mhm. I understand. Thank you.
I just had a question. What's your enforcement process for somebody that doesn't pay?
They tax the farm.
That's what I'm saying, so the barn will be responsible if the person doesn't pay?
No, that wouldn't be correct. So the person, once we're aware of who the horse owner is, that horse owner is the one that would get the tax bill, and they are the one that's responsible. So a tax bill, say for instance, I had a horse and I was boarding it at Jack's, and I didn't pay my tax bill, the tax bill would continuously come to
So
me.
he's gotta go after the individual person.
Jack, no,
No,
no, absolutely not.
it's like any other property
Any
tax
other-
in the town. It's
Correct.
with the taxpayer.
It's
not with the
between,
boarding
like, if
facility.
you have a car, it's between you and the tax collector on your car. So
Okay.
the same, it's personal property taxation.
I'm just thinking the equal enforcement, so if you have somebody that's from Hartford
Yes.
with their horse down here, what are you gonna do when they don't pay?
That's a
Same thing.
tax collector question.
That's a tax
but,
collector.
yeah.
Tax collector,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, you know, you don't pay your house tax, they put a lien on your house, you're gonna take my horse, I got a couple you can have.
Yeah, I'm not sure how she leans that, that's actually out of my
So I said you
expertise,
gotta be
but,
able to enforce it. So, and I agree with Jack also, that people don't have to keep their horses Deep River. I mean, you got people coming in here buying gas, they're going to the restaurants, and they put on, you know, you have the barn that puts on shows, you bring in a lot of revenue to the town, you know, don't start chasing people away for nickels and dimes. You know,
That's right.
so.
We kept Wade's in business for a long time.
That's right.
I think it was a 10-year run.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
What is the projected revenue from this tax versus?
This is not a projected tax. I want to reiterate that to anybody that's watching on TV. This is not a new tax. This is not projected revenues. This is revenues that the town of Deep River has been getting for decades from horse owners. It has only come to light recently with the addition of 2 large barns. Prior to that, it wasn't an issue. The horse owners were paying their taxes and whatnot. It has just basically come to light, correct or incorrect, it's become an issue recently. It probably went from a handful of horses to now there are 54 horses in town that are taxed. This is not a new tax. The town depends on that. When we go and we formulate our budget, and the Board of Finance does it, when I was on the Board of Education, $4,500 for a specific group or a committee or something's a lot of money. In the overall scheme of the town of Deep River, $4,500 or just over $4,500 in fiscal 2018 doesn't sound like a lot of money. I said it at one of the meetings, I'd put it backwards. If you divided 4,500 by the 54, that's about between $80 and $85 on average per horse owner. I put it back on, that's not a lot of money on the horse owner. And I'll just, since I'm talking, the town does not, again, we mentioned, I just wanted to reiterate, we send out the bills, we assess the horse, and the horse owner declares the value of that horse. Kevin doesn't do it, Jack doesn't do it, whatever. There might be some expertise in helping to determine that value, but they submit that value, and it goes through and it's taxed. We have to date, we have not questioned or audited any of those horses. Right now, there's not a horse that's valued over $20,000 in the town, and we've been fine with that.
That's the facts as it is right now. There's not a horse that's assessed over 20 grand in Deep River. There's 54 horses that are taxed in the town. I do say that it is a lot of money, especially when we have to look at the whole budget and all the different committees and the school and the whole 9 yards, that when certain things at the school, or if there's an extra snowstorm or some tires blow out on a truck at the DOT garage that aren't budgeted for, it costs money. And all the taxpayers have to pay that. And when we end up either in court or threaten to be in court, all the taxpayers in town will end up paying that tax, that court cost. So it's not just the barns, and it's not just the horse owners. So, that being said, I'm toward, my own personal opinion is just to leave it, table it, and leave it the way that it is, and it can be, addressed at some further point. But I do believe, like Angus said, that if it's such an important thing, and of the how many towns? 169? 169 towns in the state of Connecticut, and only just over 30 have exempted them. That's 2/3 of the town that are still taxing the horses. And there is a law that says a town can exempt horses. It doesn't say we have to, doesn't say we should, anything. It says we can. And I feel that 4,500 or 5,000, and I like the horses. I've said that to Kevin, and I think that the barns are great. And I do believe that some of the customers do come into town. I also believe that a lot of them, like boat owners and all that, when they get done boating, they want to go home. And they're out of town as quick as they come in. And I'm sure that some stay and participate and go to the Red House and all that. I have no doubt. I don't disagree with that at all. I just feel that it is not an insignificant amount of money to the town and the taxpayers of Deep River.
No, of the 30 towns, can't we look at those 30 towns are being more aggressive, cleaning this up? Because it is an old tax that was because the horses were transported. Horses cost the town, like they said, to maintain the roads, drag the roads, whatever. That day is gone. Horses are no longer transportation, just like cows and sheep and everything were taken off of personal property because they became more either food groups or agricultural to produce something else. The horses have changed. Those 30 towns are the progressive towns. We have a town that happens to have quite a few horses. A lot of these towns don't. So they're not thinking about it. We're thinking about it because it is a loaded town. And there's already got to the point where some people are saying, okay, now if my horse is worth this much, and if I'm honest and I declare it, it's gonna cost me $100, $200 more a month to keep my horse in Deep River.
Well, it's that average number that I said was between $80 and $90 per year.
But now you're asking people to be a little bit dishonest.
Well, they already are.
I've always been asking.
They already
you
are.
can't have it both ways.
Yes. No, I don't believe that.
Jane? No.
I think I want to raise 2 points. And the first is that every time we ask people about Deep River, they say that what they really like is the rural atmosphere. Well, they don't like to hear this, but it means that they have to pay for that rural atmosphere with higher taxes. The other thing that I want to say about the horses is that unless you do some count, as Killingworth does, of all the horses, and that includes the little 2 and 3 horse barns, unless you survey all of them the way Killingworth does, it's not fair. I mean, it's obvious that there are some barns that really stand out. But if you're going to tax, you've got to survey all of the horses in town.
It's my understanding that we do, Jane.
Yeah, Jane and I have 11 accounts within our municipality that are Deep River residents that have horses. So if I'm in, of those 11 accounts, I know what amount of horses they have at their facility. So if you're stating that I'm missing others within town,
I can count more horses than that.
not horses, I'm saying accounts. So,
Yeah.
right.
There are a lot more horses.
Go ahead.
Barns with horses.
I think I don't know, there's a lot of stuff that's being rehashed, re-brought up, and I think really what the biggest question and concern is, over the last decade, we've had a handful of very big barns move into this area and drum up some business. I think the concern that they're having is, will this tax chase away potential customers? That, I think, is probably one of the biggest concerns with the bigger barns is, are people gonna look at this as we're targeting the wealthier customers coming into the area, things like that? Is it gonna drive business away?
Mhm.
So,
Well,
that,
I guess my question-
really boils down to the main concern is, as far as, small farm businesses go, things like that. I think that's what the big, what the most barns are concerned with, is the potential of losing customers over a tax. The tax has been there, like you said, it's not a huge tax, it's not gonna break the bank on people, things like that, but it does potentially deter some of the tighter.
Yeah, I don't know, the towns that I've looked at that have the larger barns, and that is not an extensive list of research, and most of the research I was looking at was involved with taxes. The towns that I've looked at that have the larger barns all tax their horses. They do
No,
not have an
I'm not
exemption.
saying, but I think
I'm
that
just,
is.
so I don't see Deep River as being any different.
No, I'm not saying that, I'm
And,
just saying that this is what I
in this
think
particular
people are
instance.
concerned with.
Yeah, I understand that, thank you.
And more or less at this point, instead of rehashing old things and talking about things that we've talked about multiple times, I think we would all love to hear each one of your opinions before you make a vote, and then maybe we could field a couple questions, so we're not just hashing over.
That's actually what I was trying to do when we got sidetracked, so I think we heard Jim.
And it's sorry, and it's just what we're trying to do is we're just trying to we're trying to keep it all here, keep all the people coming in.
Yep.
So, and the barn owners have to protect the customers. So
No, I understand.
we're here. I'm here.
You're
for-
representing
I'm here
your
for-
customers, yeah.
We're here for a boatload of horses worth $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 if you want to buy any. If anybody else wants them. But
Yeah, I
so I
understand.
mean,
I
we're
understand.
protecting them as well.
You were your agents for your customers, I understand
And
that.
I think Hillary at the last meeting offered a very nice service that if we have some that are not responding to the personal property tax, that she offered that I could go out to the property, we'll go over the ones that have not complied and make sure that, because I think no one knows better than the owners of these facilities that this is where the assessment should be or this is the value of it. So if that concern in helping your borders.
Yeah, because we don't have enough going on as it is now.
Who is sorry?
Stan's wife. that
Stan's
offered-
wife,
And
okay.
that's, if that's not amenable to you, Kevin, that's fine. I'm offering my
So we're
services to go to
gonna
your
listen to
property.
Dwayne now,
No,
thanks.
I think my wife was, if there was a problem with the issue
Yeah.
of somebody not paying their taxes,
Oh,
rather
no,
than putting it on the bill of the barn.
I don't, that's
That's
never.
never been,
That's
never been
understandable.
put in
I think
the
that's up for argument. I think that's.
I guess it depends on the information that we get from the barn and from the horses.
Well, as Jack put us on the spot 2 weeks ago, no, in all honesty, I was on one side of the spectrum.
Absolutely.
And I was on the other side of the spectrum. I hear the farmers, I understand the farmers. I understand their clients, their customers. We want them to come into our town and buy gas, go to Da Vinci's, whatever, go to the Red House. I understand that. On the other side, getting rid of the tax, like Jimmy said, when we're doing our budgets, we worry about every penny. And the $4,500 may not seem like a lot of money, but it is when we're nickel and diming it. I'm willing tonight to table it, just leave it status quo, but I would like to talk more about possibly phasing out the tax. Do we have to keep it at $1,000 tonight and say that's it and we're good for the next 5 years, 10 years? Or can we consider leaving it at $1,000 now, do a little bit more research, and possibly phase it out over a couple-year period? People, we haven't talked, I haven't talked to, but again, I just try to find a happy medium between the horse owners, the selectmen, and the other 4,000 people that we represent in the town.
Well,
So that would be, we start off with 1,000 this year, and then maybe, again, I'm just thinking out loud, and I'm probably out in left field, but $20,000 next year. And the following year, it goes goodbye. I don't know, just a way of phasing it out where the horse owners are gonna get the end result, we're gonna get a couple more years of taxes that we can prep for, and be prepared that we're gonna lose shortfall of that $4,500. I don't know, I'm just thinking to try to find a compromise with all sides.
I appreciate your effort
What's
there.
this $1,000? That's anything below, what are you saying with $1,000?
It's the status quo.
That's where it is right now, it's $1,000. Anything under $1,000, you don't pay taxes on
Right.
it. Anything over 1,000, so what I think I'm hearing from everyone else is leave it at the $1,000 right now. But what I would like to see, it's just who me, it's Dwayne, to try to work with the farmers, is to maybe try to phase it out over a couple year period. So we're appeasing you guys, we're appeasing the other constituents that we take care of. I know people aren't gonna be happy, but at least we're trying, versus saying, it's $1,000 tonight, and that's it. Don't come back to us for another 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. That's not who I am. I wanna try to make things right for everyone. And if that's what we have to do, and we can do it, I would like to try it, and maybe we can. Have some one-on-one discussions with Stan and Jack and Kevin and everyone, just to come up with a policy.
But what happens to the 20,000? You're saying the 20,000 is gonna stay on there? That isn't in
No.
there now.
That was just a proposal that
That
was
was a
floated
proposal.
out. Yeah,
Now
that's-
you're back
yeah.
down to $1,000.
We're back to the status
But just
quo, the
to try
way
to-
that it is
We're right back when we
presently.
started.
But
Yes.
to try,
Well, we were put into the corner,
but
go
to
ahead.
try,
Can I make a comment? First of all, thank you for the creativity. I think we all want what's best for the town. We also understand, well, it may not seem like a lot, 5,000 against this budget is a lot in 1 year. So I like the creativity. I think that also over that same amount of time, we can take a closer look at how much does growing the business, retaining the business of the horses and the farms help contribute to the economy of the town. If we had a little more insight on that, that would also really help us look at the full financial picture.
Yeah, I'm not, go ahead, Stan.
I just want to say that with the reassessment of our total property, with the value increased over the 1 year period, I think we would cover the loss of the revenue. $4,500.
Yep,
And I know ours will.
I appreciate that,
Put
yeah.
that right back in there, so we're not
Yep.
really losing anything from our
Yep.
customer base.
Those are good points, Dwayne. It's a good point. I thought that we were headed in that direction with the proposal of the 20,000 exemption, anything under 20. And I'm not at all saying that we're set, once we make a decision tonight to not make any changes, that's the end of the conversation.
No.
We're never gonna talk about it again. I'm happy to continue any conversation. I don't think we need to continue having these meetings, every 2 weeks, have the same conversation over and over and over again. I'd like to see some new information. But I am also, I would love to, I love seeing you guys. But I'm working right now. So,
If you want to take riding lessons, I got some scoring.
I'll tell you a tale about, I'll tell you a tale about Daisy May, my granddad's
Daisy
horse.
May.
Yeah. But I'd be happy to continue the conversation. I'll be with you in a second. All these conversations are great. I felt as if we had made something that was the beginning of that. That was, in fact, a beginning of an end. That hopefully you all are going to continue to work with your legislators and try to get this law changed in the state. Because this is a state law. We have an opportunity to work locally. But it is a state law. And we are in the minority right now. Even if we go to the $20,000 exemption, we are in the minority. So, not that I mind being in the minority. So I'm actually absolutely open to any kind of outside of the box thinking. But we've been told pretty clearly that if we go outside of the box, we're probably going to be tested in court. And I have no interest in putting the town in that jeopardy.
that's something that we have to get a commitment from the farmers. We're willing to work with you to have a 3 year, 5 year, 2 year, 1 year, whatever it may be, that it goes away. But we can't be threatened that we're gonna get sued either. I don't want to spend the taxpayers' money on lawsuit.
No.
But if we can get an understanding with the group, and we can phase it out over 3 years, again, whatever it may be, that everyone is on the same page, we're all ladies and gentlemen, and we have a policy in hand that we're gonna adhere to it, great, let's work through it and help everybody out. But if we're gonna go into a 1 year and find out we're gonna get sued, I'm not up for it.
No, I don't know.
So again, that's just my thinking outside the box.
Kevin?
I mean, I think it's I think Dwayne's, new insight is a good thought, and I think, we're reasonable people too. I think it's, and I get a little bit defensive when we go, oh, we're saying the same things over and over. Well, this gentleman hasn't spoke before, and neither has he, and everybody's got a different.
That's why we asked him to come, yes.
So I think it's important that we all keep it open. And I know you guys have a lot of stuff going on, but we do too, and I think it's obviously important to everybody in this room, or else we wouldn't be here every 2 weeks. So, again, we appreciate the dialogue, and if you guys aren't in a position to do anything, we're still waiting to hear from the Commissioner of Agriculture. The Farm Bureau's reached out to them, and they still have not weighed in on this. And I personally believe that they're in a bit of a bind too, because they're trying to help protect municipalities, but, and this is where I agree with you, Angus. I know we don't agree about a lot of things, but I think that, from the top down, the 490 is set up in such a way that it's a little bit unenforceable, and it puts a lot of burden on you guys and us. We came into town thinking that that protection was 100%, and it's really not by what's going on. So I think, we're thankful for your time, and I think Dwayne's, phase out proposal should get looked into, if that's the direction you think is a pro-agricultural move. Because I do think, and I think collectively, we would be happy to do an accounting of revenue from our customers in the town. We could save that one woman who was in here the other night. She spends a lot of money in town. So if we wanted to do our accounting, you start to do an accounting on what the real net is on that gross number we're talking about. Maybe we'll come back to it and you guys may go, wow, this isn't really what we thought it was. But I think the constant reminder of litigation or bringing that up, listen, nobody wants to spend the time doing the amount of paperwork we have now. And I think it's just gotten very cumbersome. So I appreciate the suggestions and I appreciate your opinions. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but I think a constant and a continued effort to really look into it. And I think it's important that out of the 30 towns that we did model after, we modeled after the one that's really out kind of off by itself. So I'd love to hear what the commissioner has to say, and hopefully, Joan seemed to think that they were going to have some answer for us in the near future. And I think it would be enlightening for everybody as to what the direction is.
You say about that one town, Kevin, the Killingworth.
Yeah.
I understand, but if you're looking at for the pot of gold at the end, and you know that we have an agreement in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it may be, that it goes away, and we can be the 31st town or the 32nd town. Let's take that step, okay? I don't want the whole pie right now. Give me a little slice of it. And next year, a little bit bigger slice, and then it's gone.
And I can appreciate that introduction tonight. We want to talk about hearing new things. We wouldn't have heard that unless we all came tonight. Because that's the first we've heard anything about a phase-out plan.
And that's something I think is the first that us to have heard too. I haven't heard that.
But I mean, that's a
So
great,
it's a good
that's
thing.
a great, so
And
look at it this
and
way.
if that is feasible and I have further discussion, I think that it should be looked at. But I do think that if it's such a big deal to stable and boarding facilities statewide, that it should be looked at the state level. And if the state says go away, then we don't have any say in the matter at that point, because it is state law.
And, you know, we're talking about interpretation of and all this kind of stuff, and if it's that important to the boarders and stables and farms across the state, then the effort just as much should be put in that direction too, and maybe it can be eliminated at the state level, or it can be worked on at the local level to work on it. But if it's that important, it's gotta be worked at all levels, I believe.
Yeah, no, I would agree that there's.
And Norm and Christine Palm and wherever your horse owners live, you know, whether it's Stanford or Westbrook or wherever it is, they have representatives that they can say, okay, we don't think this is fair and this is why. And take it to Hartford. And if it might solve it for everybody, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it at that point. Deep River doesn't have any say in the matter, any of the towns don't have anything to say in the matter.
I just got a quick question for Robin. Like, if you say if it stays at the $1,000 cap, let's say I claim my horse at $10,000,
You don't, but okay.
what's the tax on that?
So if you claim, then you get your 1,000 exemption at this point, and then it would be 70% of that at the current mill rate. So you're,
Okay.
And that's
So that's what you wanna know?
but that's the way that it is right now. Yeah, this isn't new, this isn't being
No,
proposed.
no.
Okay, I'm just saying, as a horse owner.
$185.35 a year.
How much?
For a $10,000 horse, you would pay $185.34 at the current mill rate per year.
That's, I was just kind of curious, you
Yeah.
know, like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's- like I said, there's in the grand scheme of things, it's not gonna make or break the bank on a lot of situations, but it's just.
Nope.
well,
It's just it's a good way for you to sell your business,
Right.
promote the business.
How about we take the tax thing out of it and call it like a horse license, like a dog license?
There you go.
You know, one girl's walking up
Someone
last
suggested a flat fee last time, I
Yeah.
thought that was right.
Don't say tax.
Yeah, I do.
Do we
Does
need a
anyone
motion?
else? No, we don't need a motion at all. We'll just, we can take a vote. We could do it. All those in favor say aye, and all those opposed say nay. But I don't think there is a motion. I don't think to keep the status quo, we just don't take any action.
Right,
Just make a
okay.
motion not to take any action. We can do that if you want. But, and we'll continue the conversation.
I want to continue the conversations and at least,
It doesn't need to be a continuous item on the agenda. I think we can continue the conversation in office hours.
So you're gonna table it and then not bring it back to meetings?
Until we have something new to talk about. Unless, you know, as much as. So,
So
that's
there's a
fine.
way to
with me.
go with Dwayne's fade out.
We can look into that, but Dwayne's suggestion is gonna lead us into court, based on the conversations that we've had here. Anything that is either all or nothing has been suggested that we were gonna be tested in court. So, we'll see what the Farm Bureau has to say about anything like this, and then we can move forward. That would be information that we can look for. But I'm not gonna bring the town into court, and I'm not ready yet to vote. If these guys both wanna vote to do this, then they win. But I'm not ready to do that yet.
but if we can get an understanding with your group, that we're going to phase out over, again, 3 years or 5 years, without the worrying about taking us to court, then I would be in favor of something down that road. If we're gonna say we're gonna phase out over 3 years and there's the chance of taking us to court and spending the taxpayers' money, I'm absolutely against it. So.
Yeah. Okay?
You're saying like to put the value on it, but if you did the phase out or whatever, and you just said you take 70% of that value of that horse, what if we dropped it like over the years period, like the first year you dropped it to 45%?
Yeah, we definitely can't do that. That's statutory. Yeah.
I think that's part of the discussion. Like I said, this is the first I've heard, you know, so I'm not gonna make a decision or urge any decision making. This is the first I've heard
Yeah, it's the first I've heard.
tonight. And it sounds like a reasonable thing. Whether it turns out to be reasonable or not, I'm willing to talk about it and all that kind of stuff. But I think as far as some sort of a vote tonight, I think I think it's just a matter of just tabling it or whatever and continuing the discussion with everybody in town, both horse people and non-horse people. You know, this affects the whole town, not just the stables and the horse owners.
I've been inviting everybody that I talk to come, and, you know, whether they agree with it or don't agree with
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
But
Exactly, yeah. Yep.
as long as we we could do something before October 1st. I mean, if you wanna throw a date out there, you know, take August off
Well,
last week of September, or
let's see, we can have some more conversations. You're welcome to come in and talk. Kevin, you're welcome to come in and talk. We can arrange for a meeting, or we can stop by. The office is always open.
thank you.
Kevin, had time?
Kevin?
No, I get you guys are getting tired, and we're all kind of tired of it too, but, you know, it's unfortunately, I think it's a process, and I think that, you know, Dwayne, for me, that suggestion tonight made the last 3 meetings in here worth, you know, we have new points coming up every meeting. I think that's critical, and that's the hard part of having this open dialogue. You know, and I know you got a lot of other stuff, and so do we all, so I get it. But we appreciate your time, and, you know, I hope you keep an open mind, but I think the one thing I'd like to leave tonight with this group kind of assembled is that, you know, the pro-agriculture, we want to be a horse farm town, we want these businesses in town. I don't know that collectively the feeling is that right now. I'm not saying you guys are doing anything right or wrong, but what I'm saying is how do you, I mean, I told you before, we had somebody call us and say, God, there's a farm for sale, what's it like there with some of this stuff? And we explained to them. So I think we want to be able to say, how do we encourage more, because there are properties for sale. And there are more people that would love, you know, once you get a couple businesses like this, look at Tewksbury, New Jersey. It's like a big magnet, and they all come in, and you know, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, you guys could have a pretty booming horse industry. Yes. And I think that's what we need to kind of aim towards. We want to be here for a long time, but you know, I think it's important that we all feel welcomed. So, but thank you very much. You guys have put a lot of effort into this, and I think it's great. Everyone has.
Thank you. Next is audience of citizens, if there's any other business to come before the board. Is there anything else? What I would like to talk about a little bit briefly is there's been conversation around the town hall and around town about trying to find a shed or something like that for up at the dump. A lot of folks drop stuff off, and other folks come and use them. We're looking to find a shed, if anyone knows of a shed that's available, or speaking mostly to the television, but if anybody here has an idea of a shed that they want to get rid of, or if it might be something that we could put up at the dump, where folks can put things that can stay out of the weather.
They're calling it a share shed.
A share shed, there you go.
Or some people.
Betty's in Essex.
Yeah.
There's one in
Yeah.
Essex, and people bring stuff to the dump that they don't want anymore, but they don't want it compacted, so they set it off to the side. And
Yeah.
if somebody wants it, they take it, but it's
Yeah.
out in the open. So my wife's one of them that wants to do that, but they want to call it the share shed.
Yeah,
I'm looking for a cement mixer.
there you go. Swap shop starts in about 10 minutes.
I've got a shed sitting on my property, but it looks like it belongs to the dump.
Well, we can send some equipment down and get it if you want.
Right down the road.
I'll give you a call. All right, that's it from me. If anybody has nothing else, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good evening, this is the regular meeting of the Town of Deep River Board of Finance, regular July 2019's meeting. Again, it is my theory that with your tape, people in 100 years will study what we do here tonight. I'm still amazed why people find that so funny. Our first item would be, would someone like to accept the minutes of our last meeting? We have not met since our last meeting. June, our June meeting. So moved. Second. All in favor, say aye.
You're not gonna ask for any changes, you're just gonna blow right through?
Well, that was what I said. You want to talk about it, or you
No,
want
no,
to?
no, you said to accept it. Okay, never mind, we're good, we're good.
I am willing to listen to anything. I'll tell you what, let us go to citizens, and we have a foreign citizen with us tonight. Virginia Carmody is the chairman of the Chester Board of Finance. Okay? About a month ago, and that is a rounded number, Virginia reached out to both me and the chairman of the Board of Finance in Essex, and said we should get together and talk about shared interests, and there are lots of those. Virginia and I did do that, and she asked for the opportunity to meet you, the Board of Finance. So I'm going to have Virginia come up, although I do wish to put in context that of all the things that we are focused on and the Chester is focused on, I wish to compliment Virginia and the Board of Finance in Chester for the intensity of their focus on educational costs. Okay? While we have focused also on educational costs, I believe that they have gone a bit further, been successful in going a bit further than we have. So, while you can certainly chat about anything that you think is interesting, I would like you to sort of focus on your the educational costs. I have sent emails to the Board of Finance so that everyone knows, indicating that I had met with Virginia, and we've talked about several things. Virginia has been successful in getting some indication of what future educational costs will be. A request that we have asked for but never seem to have gotten. So if you comment on that one. And Virginia continues to ask the school administration for various information, and I sent out a memo this morning that she sent to me. So please join us at the table and
Thank you.
introduce or share what you wish to share.
Okay. Thank you for having me. Thank you. I got it. Just a little bit about me, so you know who I am. I've been a Chester resident for 20 years. Thanks to Tom Linder, in fact. And on the Board of Finance in Chester for about 18 years, and the chair of Board of Finance for about 6. My husband and I don't have any children in the school system, so I pretty much shied away from having significant conversations around the Board of Education. Just didn't really feel like it was my place. In some respects, because everything seemed to be going along pretty well until this past year. The first thing I want to stress is I'm not interested in negatively impacting the education that our kids are getting. That's extremely important to me, the Board of Finance, and the town of Chester, as I expect it is to Deep River and Essex as well. However, this past year's increases, coupled with several missteps in reporting, had our Board of Finance really concerned to the point of spending most of our Board of Finance meetings talking about the education costs and additionally what possible downstream effects our state budget might have as it applies to teacher pension obligations and possible costs in education cost sharing. So we were looking at this whole package kind of going, oh dear, what's coming? We attended many of the workshops and several meetings, but we also didn't seem to get much of a response from either the administration or the Board of Education. Though we did pry out some headcount forecasts and some dollar budgeted headcount, budgeted financial projections, and once we calculated what that would be over the next 5 years, we realized that we were looking at a 2 to 3% tax increase every year, almost every year for the next additional 4 years. And we went, uh-oh, this is a problem, this is not sustainable. But we also realized we had no leverage. The Region 4 board votes to
to send it to referendum, the taxpayers make a decision. Supervision district, boards of education make a decision. So the only time Chester really has any impact on education costs are at the elementary school level. And really none of them wanted to hear anything of our concerns that this set of increases over this coming year, the 2019-20, and the next 4 years, were really unsustainable for us. And we realized that the only way that we could perhaps gain some leverage was to collaborate with our neighboring towns. So that's why I'm here. Oh, and the Board of Finance kept saying, go talk to the other towns. And I kept going, oh no. But I'm here, and I wanted to talk to you and share those issues with you, your selectmen, etc., so that we could begin a conversation of where our shared interests are and if there was anything we can do about it. I have not met the new superintendent. I don't know the direction he'll be taking. This all might be for naught, but in case it goes down a direction that's similar to where we came from, we may be able to work together to get something accomplished. That's why I'm here. Questions, thoughts?
Well, Virginia, in Deep River, we have seen major increases in the last 3 or 4 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it is unsustainable to us to have increases of that size. Now, our ADM...
I'm not even talking ADM yet.
I know, but in comparison to the other towns, Deep River's share, even though it's dropping, is growing, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
And so that is, you can't do anything about that.
Nope.
That's just the way the numbers are. But still, taxpayers are having a hard time in Deep River. You knew that already. You talked with Bud. And often during our budget hearings upstairs, town meetings, we hear from folks on fixed income, young families who are having real problems with the tax increases we have had to make in Deep River, largely because of school costs.
Yeah, I'm aware. We've watched Deep River turn back your Region 4 budget several years in a row. This was the first year Chester did, in part because of our $719,000 increase. 59% of it was Region 4, 20% was elementary school, 10% was because we had like $120,000 uptick between operating and capital, and we had a reduced grand list for the remaining part, which was difficult. And making that information available to the taxpayers through a postcard made a huge difference. Everybody stopped and went, wait a minute, what does this mean? So, you know, we need to be able to continue to build our infrastructure capital account. We need to be able to continue services for our seniors. And we see that going to be more and more difficult if there's not some way of getting our arms around the costs. And part of what we saw was that we can't seem to get into the details. So we can't make a judgment on that which we can't see. So we're really pushing hard to have that become more open and transparent. Not that we're going to say what to do about anything, because it's not our purview to tell them how to do it, but if it is opened up and we can see it, and the boards of ed can see it, because it seems to me with only 7 meetings a year on a basically $38 million budget, they're not spending any time really looking at their details, and they need to.
Jimmy Dwayne Gates, I'm one of the selectmen, and Jimmy Olson, myself, both
Thank you.
selectmen. We both served on Deeper Elementary School and Region 4 Board of Education for several years before we came to the site. The biggest problem that we see is the Region 4. And by the time it gets down to your elementary school, just like you, we're cutting our elementary school and cutting elementary school and cutting elementary school. And they're taking the blunt of it all. Whereas it has to start up on the top of the hill with the Region 4 budget and the supervision district budget. So many years I had asked, I know you can't get all the specifics, but it's a shell that they seem to hide under, is the special education cost. It's very simple. I don't need to know who's going to special education, but if we have 12 students for special education, so to speak, and it's $400,000, okay, I want to know what A is going, B is going, C. I want to see those numbers, because it's very easy to play with those numbers that we can't see because it's special education.
Right.
And that's a big chunk of all the budgets is a special education. And so I would hope that with the new superintendent that we have there, that we can get that information. But the costs have to stop going. The enrollment's going down, and the costs are going up. I mean, we got hit hard this year on the ADM and everything else. The first year teacher's contract, they gave them a significant raise. Well, I'm a union representative, and it's great for those people, but you know, it should have been the other way on the backside. You know, it hurt all the taxpayers up front by giving those big raises the first year. Because by the time you compound it out, it's going to cost you more than if you went 2, and then 3. And people don't look at that, but it all adds up at the end of the day. So we understand exactly what you're up against. And like I said, Jimmy and I sat there for several years. And you know, it's tough because you're trying to have the balancing act for the children, but you also have to think about the taxpayers. And now when we're on this side, then it's more for the taxpayers, and we still got to think about the children. So it's we're on against education. We're 100% education because those are our future of our communities.
I hope Angus shared with you the letter that I sent. I CC'd him.
We do have a copy of it.
I know you guys do, but did you share that with the other selectmen? Okay, so for me, it's not about going after the teachers necessarily. I think teachers deserve to get paid and paid well for the jobs that they do. And it's certainly not about cutting the classes or the programs that are going on in the school, but having the Mislick property get bought without any oversight is a problem. So there are other things that have led to this $400,000 of extra costs in the 17-18 year. It becomes exacerbated when you realize on top of the cost for the Mislick property, there was also, I've heard, somewhere between $40,000 and $80,000 that was spent on legal fees in that process. This is all coming through to the taxpayers, and the taxpayers didn't have the benefit of knowing that that was something in a capital list that was going to hit the taxpayers first. So my intent is mostly to start a conversation and make sure that if there are places where we can partner, that we give each other that support if it's appropriate for our towns.
I'd like to say that a lot of what you have in this letter is something that we've publicly and individually, publicly on film and at the board meetings, tried to get answers for, have asked repeatedly, and we get danced around. We got these beautiful song and dance, and we never got the questions answered, to our satisfaction, I should say. Very little information. I personally would like to see some of the answers here, and I think we really should as a boards and 3 towns.
So I never heard from Keith Crehan, I believe is his last name, from Essex. I don't know if he's on vacation or other things going on with him.
That'll
do it. That'll do it.
He's been busy. Yes.
Opening his wallet.
So I haven't had a chance to talk to him yet, and it's just preliminary. It's just, I'm glad to hear, I'm sorry to hear you have the same concerns we have, but if the superintendent knew that the letter that we just sent out was completely approved and in step with what Deep River is feeling, that will give us a little bit more leverage. If the selectmen in our town were ready to sign the letter, but I wasn't ready to wait until I had another meeting, so, because I wanted to get it out.
I had the
They would
feeling
have
he's gonna
signed
look
it.
at this and say, ouch. Oh my God, what did I step into? And I'm hoping he does, and I hope he looks into it thoroughly.
I think he will.
I'm
I don't
hoping so.
know, but I think that, I think we can create that leverage.
I'd
You know,
like to have
there's-
the discussion.
Yeah, let's have that discussion.
There seems to be a misstep somewhere within the presentation of the budget to the towns, to the people, because the budgets are accepted.
Yeah.
And I think, and you used a phrase, it's for the good of the children. You know, we have to keep our kids in mind. Well, as a former educator, you never don't have your kid in mind. As a parent, you never don't have your kid in mind. But people don't seem to understand where all that money is going. Much of it is, I think, overspent, larger than it needs to be.
We don't know because we can't see it.
But that's my point. The people in the town who vote for it, who accept it, don't see it. Because they accept the budgets.
Well,
There's no one saying, we're not doing that, come up with another budget. It gets passed.
right, so what helped Chester this year in terms of Region 4 specifically was that we put out a budget postcard.
We do that every year.
You do it every year?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys do.
Yeah.
So there were two things that we weren't allowed to put on that card at the last minute that we were told we would be sued if we did. One was about the projections going forward, that Region 4 headcount was going down 17% over the 5 years, but their costs were going up and have a tax impact to Chester of around 2%. That's significant, they went. But I couldn't put it on the postcard.
Why would you have been sued for that?
Yeah.
It's just information.
It was information above and beyond what has normally been put out in the presentations and therefore was deemed to be a violation of the use of public funds to influence a Region 4 referendum.
We've had similar conversations here, not specific to that, but we have, that it's our cards are informational, and we cannot, as elected official or official board, opine on how people should vote in our correspondence, so. we
You
could not-
can, as long as it's not being done with public funds within a certain period of time, and I don't know what that period of time is yet, but we'll figure it out, around the referendum. So at what point does the referendum umbrella take effect? I'm not sure. If it's 2 weeks or a month or when they publish that that's the date for the referendum, I'm not sure. But there's some piece in there that dictates that. So maybe it's something that goes out sooner.
Certainly something we've bumped up against, so.
I think it's a pretty complicated situation too, because of the fact, the way we're structured in the 3 towns. So in terms of grand list and overall economic structure, I think Chester and Deep River are a little closer to each other than Essex, right? So on a residential household basis, for example, the school increases hit a household in Deep River very hard. They hit Chester hard recently. You guys only recently.
We skated for
Right,
a while while you got ADM.
Right, we got hit for 3, 4, 5 years.
10 years.
10 years. Okay, Essex, they have some very large taxpayers by comparison that are commercial enterprises in town. So even when it goes up, their households don't feel it the same.
Right.
And so it's difficult because you have to look at the overall vote that carries these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's another part of maybe collaborating. The state statute has Essex on the Board of Ed 1.2 per voter. Deep River is 1 and Chester is 0.8. So it's weighted by population in a way that disadvantages the smallest town the most.
Right.
Maybe that's something that needs to be brought to the State Board of Education, that might be worth changing in some way, or talking about how the, what's it called, MBR?
Yeah.
That worked well after 2008 and the downturn in the financial sector of the country, but now it's crippling us. You guys just went through that this past year. We did 3 or 4 years ago, where we had to increase our budget to not get an $84,000 hit, or whatever that was.
Now, I was not aware of that. When the Board of Regional 4 vote, their votes are weighted by the town they're from?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, that weight is there, but I don't think it's ever had to go.
It hasn't been used.
It has not ever been used. I was on the board for 17 years and it's never been used.
But it could be.
But it could be if a certain situation arose that it could be, yes. But it has never, to my knowledge, ever been used yet.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know of it being used
Yeah.
specifically, but this year had Deep River also had a little bit closer vote on the Region 4 referendum, and it would have come into play based on the number of votes. It may have been used. So it's just something to be looking at as well.
So if the citizens vote on the referendum, do the results of the town also get weighted? Or are all votes counted equally when we vote on the referendum?
I don't know.
I think
All
all
votes?
votes, I think it's
Yeah.
just the
All votes.
board that has the weighted.
That's the way I thought it was.
Right.
but I
It's
did
just
not
a
know.
board vote.
Referendum is, every vote is a vote.
Right.
It's the Board of Education has the weighted votes if it becomes necessary.
Okay, so I misspoke.
I believe, that's what I believe to be.
Yeah.
That's always the way it's been
I got
explained to me.
If you were to weight it economically, however, the numbers would be very disparate, right? Like, the impact on a household in Essex
Oh, yeah.
is going to be significantly less
Depending on how you
than
break
the
it down.
impact of a household in Deep River, for example.
Absolutely.
Two things I think are apparent to me, and I don't know if other people share this or not. I think it's communication between Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and our representatives on the Region 4 Board of Education. To let them know, perhaps we should meet with them more, and I'm speaking for Deep River only, not for Chester, to meet with them more and let them know the ramifications of the school's budget on our town as a whole. I always worry that if things get too out of hand, businesses will close down in town. Businesses may move out. And when I first came to Deep River 30 years ago, it was rough here in town. Things were closed. Main Street wasn't pretty like it is now, and it didn't have nice shops like it does, which I like and which I shop in. So I think if we communicate with the Board of Education, we want to keep those programs I know I don't look like it now, but in my youth I was an athlete, I was also a musician, and my brother was an art teacher, and I had another brother who was always in the musicals. We like the arts, we like woodworking, we like all of those things because it creates well-rounded citizens for the future. It's not just about numbers and English, which are also important. But we want all of those things. But for a $20 million budget at 2 schools, I think you could do you can do a pretty nice job on that kind of money. It's another couple of $100,000 really that much more? Is it going to make that much more education? Is it going to be that much better for the kids? And then the other thing I would say is some years ago, we tried to regionalize all of it. It was voted down. Maybe we should revisit that again if that's possible. I know it's a schlag.
A long time ago, it was voted
down and then.
It never got to a vote.
Then 3 or 4
It's
years
stalled
ago.
in Chester.
Chester squashed it about 3 or 4 years ago when I was still on the
It's
ARPA
it's
board.
an
yeah.
incredibly difficult thing to do.
Absolutely.
I realize it takes a ton
Gotta
of,
go all three
there was
times.
a ton of work expended,
Yep.
just to get nowhere last
Yeah.
time. I know,
But I
I guess
think-
that you talk with the superintendent often and have over the years, and so did Mr. Smith before you. And we just need to keep doing all those things, and perhaps a little communication could make some difference.
I'd like to talk about the regionalization process a little bit. I was very instrumental in the town of Chester to squashing that effort at
Oh,
that
it was
time.
you.
It was.
Sorry.
But it wasn't because of regionalizing, it was because of the intermunicipal agreement that was drawn up, where it had Deep River having $1.2 million of extra costs that it was deemed Chester and Essex should pay for. And Chester needed to pay $800,000 of that amount, and Essex was paying $400,000 of that amount. And it was over a 5-year period, but the cost to Deep River, I think it was about $1 million, was over in 4 years, but we were still paying in the 5th year. So the imbalance of costs coming out of Chester versus Essex was understandable, that we just didn't understand how that intermunicipal agreement was written. It certainly wasn't written with us at the table. And then all of the questions regarding, well, who owns the schools, the buildings themselves, who's maintaining them, who's snow plowing them, who's taking care of all of the buildings, was never answered at all. But the intermunicipal agreement specifically was a really difficult set of numbers for Chester to swallow, and we just said we won't vote.
I think we might have to start right from the ground zero.
Yeah, absolutely do. But if I might, and this is with all due respect, and I empathize, I have considerable empathy for Chester this year because Chester was hit hard. Deep River has suffered through this for multiple years.
Mm-hmm.
We've had, I don't remember the specific numbers now, but I want to say it was in the $6 million added in new money to our budget over the last 10 years. And I don't think it was 10 years of new money because of ADM and all those things, while Chester and Essex have skated. That agreement was drawn up to try to bring a little bit of equity to this. Besides the regionalization and all of that kind of thing. Chester and Essex is a different animal. But, and this is said with all due respect, but man, nobody cared about this until it hits you in home, right?
Right. No, I
You know,
agree.
but
it wasn't
I have,
just that.
I have absolutely agree that we should work towards this and we should do it cooperatively. This is a cooperative effort anyway, right?
That's horrible.
Lauren and I have been up every time there's a meeting, either at CCM or at cost that has to do with this. Lauren and I are there, and we are talking, and we're trying to lobby the state to allow for the boards of finance to have personnel involved in the budget process, whether they're members of the Board of Education, whether it's another board or anything like that. There's a lot of effort being made. What's happening here in Deep River and in Chester and in Essex is not atypical from what's happening in every other regional system around the state. And it needs to be addressed at a state level. I do believe better communication can always improve these things. But I don't think we've got, with the state laws what they are right now, we don't have a lot of authority.
So Lauren made available to the Board of Finance in Chester some of the documentation from your meetings with cost regarding a cooperative agreement of some kind. Where is it going? What is it doing?
Right now, the session is ended. We're trying to formulate and get some ideas to the people. I have not heard anything in the last couple of months, but it was, as you might imagine, everybody was focused on the budget, getting the session done. Now the session is done, I assume we're gonna get right back at it. The MBR, they did make some concessions to MBR, it needs to go further. You know,
Was Lon Seidman one of the people that was involved with that from Essex?
MBR,
'Cause he was-
I'm confident that he was involved in
Yeah.
MBR.
Yeah,
I
right,
don't
he
know.
was. He went to
He's
school.
not been involved in any of the
cost.
any of the costs,
Right.
no.
We've also invited Lon to come speak to the Board of Finance, and I open it for anyone else who'd like to attend at our August meeting to specifically talk about how he feels, or what he knows about the new committee that was put in place for the last legislature to talk about cooperative agreements and perhaps how he feels it needs to be structured going forward. So that's another preliminary discussion that's on the table. I want to make sure for our town that we're part of that discussion, that we're not shut out of it. Certainly the last regionalization process pretty much shut out everybody until it became apparent that the intermunicipal agreement had to be approved by the Board of Finance, at which point we did get involved. But other than that, everything else had been done within the boards of education. But if we're going to do something collaborative, I believe that we need to be at the table sooner. And so I hope that we can do that.
I'd like to, and while it is important that we strongly continue working with the state and try and get this fixed on their end, what we've got going on as far as the property that was purchased, as far as their sinking fund, which we have no say on.
But we should.
Well, we should, and that's what I'm saying. I think we need to clean up that house first. The items, for the most part, discussed here on our part, and any support that we can give you and going up to the state to try and get the minimum balance.
Oh, I mean,
You know,
believe me, I know that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody around this table that wouldn't support some changes.
Right,
And
I mean,
all
we need to do
of the
that, but
same
we need
changes.
to clean up this mess in-house.
We need to be careful how we address that, because we don't have, the sinking fund, we're not gonna have a voice in that. We can hopefully see the numbers better, and that's I think
Well,
that.
the state statute requires that they be better.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
hope.
So,
But as far as what they're projecting, any big projects that they have,
they've begun, I think
Yeah,
Dwayne is helping us,
At a 5-year cap.
representing us on that.
At a 5-year capital plan.
right, get the
Yeah.
5-year capital
Those are
plan,
important.
what are they planning on, and how they expect the towns to support those capital plans?
And
That's a
this year
biggie.
it started off, I want to say it was like 220-some thousand. They whittled it down to a little over 100,000. They wanted to get the main things done, the safety concerns. And then the other ones, they were going to consider bonding them because they're bigger price tags.
Right, but
Yeah, the
that
athletic
really
field.
concerns the town, and the towns need to be more aware that, hey, the school is looking to go have us put more money on.
Because I believe in 2020, a bond is up.
Yep.
I thought it was 2022.
I'm not sure. I thought it was supposed to be
I
2020.
thought it was 2020, a bond is up, and they were just gonna reallocate more money to do the track, soccer field, and something else, some major components of their 5-year capital plan. Lauren sat on the capital plan policy with me also. So at least they have something, they never had that in the past. It was always, okay, we have money, let's go do this, and we'll do that. Now they have something in the plan. So there's a document, it's a live document moving, daily or monthly. Lee Rankin is now in charge of the facility up there, and she's doing a wonderful job, and they looked at all the safety concerns first. The sidewalks, there's some sidewalks that were tripping hazards, there's stairs at John Winthrop that were tripping hazard. Those were important that were done in this year's budget. They're
Yes,
supposed to be done.
Yeah, I'm aware.
So-
They made that available to
Yep.
us.
So at least they have something that they
They've
never had
started.
before.
Yep.
So they're starting in the right direction.
Absolutely.
So it sounds as if those costs are necessary costs. Where then does all the extra stuff come in? What is it going towards? Is it
the problem?
administration? Is it teacher benefits? Is it salaries? Is it books and supplies?
You
Is
saw
it-
the line item, I
Yeah.
believe, I think the salaries this year for Region 4 was, again, don't quote me, it's like $1 million. I mean,
Yeah.
the salaries were a big part of
That's a
that
big
budget.
part of it.
But then
That's
they
just
had
on
to-
salaries, that's not counting the budget. I mean,
But
that's
see, this is
counting
what
the,
I said before, you can't have control or be critical of or suggest differences to something you don't know and don't understand. If people see a number, we're gonna just take a number, $100,000, and this is our Region 4 budget, and it's for the kids. Because we want the kids to have a good track field, not a soccer field, and blah, 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 and safety, and yada, yada, yada. Are you gonna not vote for it? You're gonna vote for it.
but out of the 20, I mean, you sat at one workshop,
Yes,
Lori sat there,
absolutely.
but out of that $20 million budget, I don't remember exactly what percentage, but a lot of those were fixed costs.
Yep.
On your health benefits, on your workman's compensation, on your salaries. Those were fixed costs that no one has any control over. And then it whittled it down to the operating expenses for the plant operation of the school, the lights, the power, the water,
Right.
everything else. And then once you broke it down, there really wasn't a lot of money that they were playing with. That money that they're providing us, is there fat in it? I don't know. And maybe I think that's what they're asking us to peel the layers of the onion back and see what's in there. I can remember when my buddy Richard Strauss sat on the Board of Education with us, and Richard always wanted to peel it back and see. And okay, I don't need to know how many paper clips were bought and how many pencils were bought, but on the bigger things that are important, we should be able to see. It should be transparent. And that's what I think with this new superintendent, that whether the Board of Finance chairpersons or the selectmen have to start them off right off the bat, that we expect to see A, B, C, D, and go from there. But a lot of those, but back to what you're saying, Carmela, again, if the salaries for 25 teachers is $1.4 million, it's $1.4 million. I don't need to know that, oh, Carmela makes $52,000, she makes $61,000. We don't need to know that. Even though it's broke down, I mean, it's offered to us, we can see it as a Board of
Yeah, we
Education.
can see it.
We can see it, but, I mean, you see the salaries, the
Nothing you can
insurance.
do about it individually. It's
No.
not a number, it's a whole number.
The insurance, we saw the insurance right here for our town employees, that it went up 14 or almost 15% this year. That's, we have no control over that. So those costs are fixed costs, I call them.
But then also the line that you were taking as far as supporting the student-to-teacher ratios. What are they? Give us some background and show us what the numbers are.
So they've shown us from the elementary school how many students are in, each class and in each
Right.
classroom.
Right.
But they haven't showed us any numbers regarding Region 4 for the middle school or high school. And it probably is a different metric because there are more programs than there are, just 4 grades of English and 4 grades of math or science or whatever, that there are other things.
Totally different animal.
But it still should be able to be reported on and given to us because it's what is driving the cost of how many teachers they need. And in this past year, they had $265,000 in salary surplus. So explain why, how did that happen? There's some issues, especially when you start looking back over the last, how many years, 7 years of audits, that they've been carrying these deficits, especially in capital, that they're going to be reimbursed by the state, and all of a sudden it switches to, well, we're going to transfer money from the general fund in the following year. It's like, wait a minute, then you must be increasing your cost in the following year to cover the deficit from the prior year. But we hadn't been looking at the audit reports, hadn't been digging into the needs of the audit reports until there was this $199,000 capital deficit this year and the other 2 deficits, both in the grant and revenue line and the cafeteria line. So we started asking questions. Our auditor had turned to us and said, there's a problem in cafeteria fund for Chester. There's about an $80,000 disconnect. And we ended the year with a $10,000 deficit. So we hired our auditor to go look at specifically the cafeteria fund. So now they're reworking, the Region 4 admin is reworking cafeteria so that it will have the direct and indirect cost. It will show the allocation coming to Chester and the other two towns. More specifically, because before it just said, here's the budget and here's the cost, and they match 100%, end of story. And then we had these huge deficits at the end of the year. So that's being cleaned up. And they recognized, I sat down with Lon Seidman and Kelly, I believe her name is the accounts manager of Essex, and Kim Allen from the school to talk specifically about cafeteria fund, because Lon said, we don't have that problem with the cafeteria fund that you and Deep River have. And I was like, why? How did that work? So they started to explain that they do it slightly differently for Essex. And then Kim Allen went into all the specifics of how they're going to change the reporting to make it more clear for us and clean up the deficits that they've been carrying, because they've been carrying between a 28 and a 38% deficit in the cafeteria funds when the state average is about 2%. So something's not right. So that's a risk that the towns have been carrying that needs to be cleaned up and understood better. So that's why we're pushing so hard. Yes, we looked at it this year more than any other year because it hit us so hard. But it hit us so hard in part because of ADM. But if it was just ADM, I think we would have been like, okay, everything's cool. But between the audit report of almost $400,000 in deficit coming through, that wasn't available until after the referendum, was a little scary, after the budgets had been set, that there were all these disconnects between what Kim Allen had presented as what she thought the capital fund was, and in fact the cash that was sitting in a bank account called construction account versus what the audit reports were saying. Huge disconnects every year. So we specifically asked the Region 4 board not to transfer $200,000 from their surplus this year to cover the capital deficit until they did an accounting of what's in there, why is it in there, how did it happen, and they hired someone to come, Brian White hired someone to come and help to reconcile those disconnects. So it was all these other reporting disconnects that really began to show that there was more issues than just an ADM hit that Chester was taking that needed to be looked at. And that's why we're reaching out beyond just grumbling with ourselves at home. Like, oh God, we got all this ADM to deal with. We understand the ADM. We understand that that wasn't what drove, that wasn't the driver for us, for the letters that have gone out and the concerns that we now have.
I bet you we could continue to talk more, but I'm going to
Yeah.
appreciate your visit, and we will, I assume you should shop at the supermarket, so we'll all stop and talk to you in the supermarket.
Okay,
Do
what
we
time
have
do you
public?
go?
We have, we're going to, it is time to go. We're going to talk about other stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, well, thank you for your efforts. I mean,
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
I
you.
hope we can continue talking and working together.
We're good talkers.
Yeah, but you seem to get through your meetings in half the time we do. You're not as good as we are at talking. Thank you again.
Give us
Thank
time.
you.
Bye.
Thanks for your
Thank you.
time.
We'll see you again. All righty, our next item would be, Tom, do you have anything to share about all the money we have?
you're gonna look at the general fund accounts, you're gonna see some new rates, and I'm just gonna, explain this. On June 11th, I transferred $500,000 from the People's United Bank account into Liberty Bank. They were offering actually a special rate. It was 2.47% with a 2.5 annual percentage rate based on new money up to $500,000. And that was actually going to be good until April 30th of 2020. I did that. And you look on the deposit report, it shows a Liberty Bank rate of 2.35. Well, what they do, it's a blended rate, so they paid 2.5% on the $500,000 that I transferred into the account that we already had, and then they paid 1.5% on the monies that were actually in the account, which was around $65,000. So they blended that rate, and that's where we came up with a 2.35% rate. I then called Melissa Hurd, who takes care of municipal accounts at People's United Bank, and asked her if we could renegotiate the rate that we had with them. The rate was 1.5, and they'd be bringing it up to 1.75. So I thought we made some progress there. And since the last report, which was dated the 25th of June, I did 2 wire transfers that were made from Citizens General Fund to People's United Bank. One was on July 12th for $900,000, and one was made on actually today for $800,000. So most of those that's tax monies that have come to the town. So that was $1,700,000. If you look at our general fund accounts today and compare that to last year, where we are now, we're short about or less $382,324 from last year, and for the total accounts at the bottom of the page, we're $294,287 less than last year. But there's a reason for that. CoreLogic, which is an escrow company which many banks deal with, are actually going to be sending $1,221,929 via wire transfer tomorrow. So this reflects 442 tax parcels that actually they actually escrow their taxes through banks, and so that money will be coming into us tomorrow. So that will certainly help our balances. That'll go into Citizens Bank General Fund, and then I will transfer that out to People's United Bank. A couple other things, regarding our USDA sewer bond, which was issued in 6/23/17. It goes to 6/27/2056. Original amount was $605,000 at 2.25%. The principal payment was due on June 23rd for $23,099. It's called a PAD payment. It's a pre-authorized debit agreement. In other words, they take the money right out of our general fund account automatically. And then we also have the Deep River Elementary School boiler payment. That was originally a $200,000 note for 7 years with Dime Bank. That was issued in 2017. The payment, which is due July 29th, is $28,571. And once that payment is made, that will reduce what we owe to Dime Bank. It will be now $114,287. So that's about it.
Anyone have any questions for comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, if I remember, we now go to recommendations of selectmen. Angus, do you have recommendations, or shall we go straight to the continued conversation of Eversource, which is exciting?
That is actually our recommendation. I'd like to go straight into that. I'd like to reopen the board of selectmen's meeting at 8:25. And hopefully we can make a vote tonight. We have a couple of visitors or people here to help support, give us some technical support. Dave Carpenter from NEC and I've done a bunch of research. Just to synopsize, to bring everybody back up to speed, There's an energy upgrade that we're proposing for the 3 municipal buildings here on Main Street, the town hall, the library, and the elementary school. The total cost of that, and that's to upgrade it, mostly lighting, most of this is lighting, but also there was a good portion of this that will help with the heating at the elementary school and these buildings. The stumbling block that we were finding is how are we going to be able to pay for this, because it is an atypical situation. Most of these energy initiatives that are put forward by the government, by the federal government, and by the Eversource, is the cost to borrow to do the work gets absorbed into the bill. So you don't see a separate bill, you just get billed into that. That is usually got to take place in anything from 4 or less years. This particular one, in order to keep this cost to the town at either a cash neutral or a cash positive, the borrow needed to extend out to 10 years. The total borrow, I think we spoke about before, I think it was $288,000 or something around there, $282,000. What that does is it leads to 2 bills. We're going to have an energy bill and we're going to have a loan payment bill. So we were stuck on how are we going to work this out. Through a lot of support from PTE, from NEEC, and also from the finance group, they broke down individual buildings and individual costs, individual savings, and also prorated all of the payments to the loan. So I've spoken, based on that, given that information, we know that the elementary school is going to have a fixed cost of $2,200 per month for those 10 years. Their energy costs over those times that are, for electricity, are $4,454, and gas is somewhere else. But so the projected savings is going to be $2,300 a month over that. So there's really like an $84. This is not a financial thing for the schools themselves. The savings are not going to see. We're going to see energy savings, and we're going to see it over an extended period of time. But the point that I was getting at, sorry, I got sidetracked there, is that the elementary school, the proposal anyways, the elementary school will provide 2 checks, one to the town that will cover that $2,200 loan payment. The other will be to their utility bills. So, the Board of Education needs to agree to that. Along those lines, I've already spoken with the chairman, the superintendent, the principal, and the financial director over at Region 4, and they're all on board as far as in principle. We're all meeting tomorrow morning to try and iron it out, and then we'll call a special, if this moves forward here, we'll call a special meeting of the Board of Education and vote one way or the other to educate everyone, and we'll have more support there for that.
But that's not these 3 buildings. You're talking about Region 4 education.
No, elementary school. But we need to get the superintendent involved in this because there's supervision and all that kind of thing. The superintendent needs to be there. The Deep River Elementary School Board of Education is the Board of Education we're going to be talking about. The savings is difficult to pin down as saying, okay, we're going to save, all 3 buildings we're going to save a considerable amount of money. At the elementary school, the savings is more, I think we need to look at it from, or I'm looking at it anyway, from 2 different directions. The first is, and in order to explain this, I have to go backwards a little bit in time. 10 or so years ago, we did a lighting upgrade at the Deep River Elementary School. That changed our energy costs from $5,000 a month to $2,500 a month. At the end of those 10 years, or whatever time period that was, our electric bill is back up to $5,000 a month. But if we hadn't done that, it would probably be $8,000 or $10,000. It would have gone up exponentially with that. So in the end, we are saving just by keeping up with technology. I expect the same thing to be here. I expect we will see considerable savings with the annual maintenance over there, because part of this program is replacing valves that we've been spending, $10,000 to $15,000 a year replacing valves individually. 88 different valves will be changed in this program, so that will be done, and it'll be absorbed into the total cost of this, which will be absorbed into the savings. So I think we will see savings. The elementary school won't be considerable. The town hall and the library do project to be pretty considerable savings. What I think the other part of it for me is that we will see savings in energy use. And I think that is something that we as a community need to think about doing, and the best way to encourage that is to do it ourselves as a community. So I'm suggesting that we move this to a town meeting contingent upon approval from the Board of Education, that they will accept the financial agreement that there will be 2 payments made by the Deep River Board of Education. One will continue to pay their utility bill, but 2 will be a fixed cost of $2,227.71 to cover their portion of this borrow for this upgrade. Now, I don't know if I missed anything in that, but
Where is that money ultimately come from that the Board of Education is going to?
it comes from their budget. It's budgeted. I think this year will be this year there's a mixed benefit cost in this year. This year will be difficult because we have not budgeted for this, but there will be savings. So this year, the extra checks will be difficult to understand, but we also have, the benefit is that we don't need to make our first payment until 6 months after the project is completed. So we will save, and I'm hopeful that we can get the Board of Education to agree to start that payment of that $2,200 as soon as the project is done, so we can hopefully put a line into our budget so that we can take that. So they won't see any real financial savings, because they're starting making those payments. We can put that money into our general fund under a specific line that I've called it escrow. I don't think that's the right term, but escrow it, put it there. It's designated to, if in fact we find there's a month where their cost goes over what was projected, then we can take some money out of that to help them keep their at least flat. The whole point of this 10-year borrow was to keep this cash neutral or cash positive. Ultimately, as a town, it will end up cash positive. The elementary school that's a little bit less so, but there are some details. I think that the projected maintenance savings, I think that's a really conservative number. I think we're spending more than what they're projecting on, and that will be brought back because we won't need to. There are other warranty issues that will certainly save us in the first couple of years. But I suggest that we move this forward. We've talked about it, and we all agree in principle that this is a good idea for us to do. The program seems to be a good one. And I think we have just this far short of ironing out how the payments are going to be made.
What was the principal amount that we're borrowing for the $2,200 a month?
282.
282 is the result. It's the installed cost is $359,000, almost $360,000, but there's a $77,800 incentive provided by Eversource that reduces that to the actual borrow is $282,046.
Over 10 years?
Yeah. And we're locked in right now at a 2.77% increase, interest rate. Isn't that 2.7 or 3.7?
2.74.
I've got it here. I've got it here. I just got to figure it out.
It's a rate that's forwarded by Eversource's energy lender. So there's
Right.
one company that does all the loans for Eversource.
And we had to commit to that before a certain date or.
Yeah.
And we had to lock those points in the way you would on a mortgage.
Right.
So that's locked in right now.
At school savings.
we should be resistant to thinking this is a program that will generate.
Yeah, I'm not expressing that as clearly as I would like. There will be savings, but it won't be tremendous savings. The town will see good savings.
So it's 2,200 at the school.
It's 2,200 at the school.
300 at the town hall, 300 at the library.
Approximately,
About
yeah.
20,
Yeah.
2,800.
The library is 200, the school's, the town hall's 288.
Okay, so
And there is some more noticeable savings on electric utility bills at the school and the town hall, but it is noticeable, but it's not as much as the school.
Yeah.
If I may add, if it's okay, the cash positive projection right now is $7,000 roughly for the 3 buildings per year for 10 years. That does not take into account any increased cost in energy, or as Angus was saying, any increased cost of maintenance. Now, our company was involved in the original 96 renovations at Deep River Elementary School. Those pneumatics are over 20 years old, and they're very expensive to operate, and they're also not very energy efficient. So those will all be replaced, and they're gonna be under warranty for 5 years. So it's effectively, you just removed your maintenance costs, like Angus said, that $9,000 figure, except for other items that wouldn't be in this project. If that wasn't done, it would fall in your capital program eventually, because the stuff would become non-functional and you'd have to do a bond issue. So the beauty of a program like this is if you can make it cash neutral or a strong chance of being cash positive, it's a win-win for the school and the town. And this is a case where we were able to do that within the 10-year time frame. But if you factor in
your savings, your opening phrase, the savings on a sheet is based on current terms, current.
Correct. So
we're not
rates.
assuming any increase in
rates. And it's a certainty, it's almost a certainty that Eversource is gonna come in for a rate increase in January. They do every other year. So that's beyond the control of anybody here, unless you wanna go up to the public utilities. And so those costs are gonna go up. The maintenance costs are gonna go up, utility costs are gonna go up. Those are certainties. So if you took that $70,000, which was 7,000 times 10 years, it's really, if you did a life cycle analysis, it's probably double that number.
You take that out.
When you say pneumatics, for those of us who are mechanically disinclined, which I'm not, tell me what pneumatics are, in 6 sentences.
The original control systems with steam and hot water were air-driven controls. So you had a thermostat that actually bled air and had a branch line off of it that stroked a valve in a simple radiation situation where you have these 88 radiators over at the school. So every one of those is basically runs on a 3 to 15 pound signal. Now, they need to be calibrated. They wear out after 2 to 3 years. So you have to replace the thermostat, and then the valves have started to fail, as Angus mentioned. So they're expensive because every time you have to change a valve, you got to provide labor and material, and it's usually over $1,000 a valve.
These are the valves on the
radiators. They have a little diaphragm on them, and they are air-driven.
And they will be replaced with what?
They'll be replaced with electronics, DDC electronics, and they will have a 5-year warranty. So they basically are going with solid state controls.
Yeah.
And that's going to improve the efficiency of the building. It's also going to make Pete's job easier because he can go through the whole building and check all the building. It's going to save him time, but it's going to save energy because he'll be able to check all the rooms, find out what the temperatures are, and he can set up an individual schedule for every room, which you can't do right now. So you run a zone of 20 rooms or 10 rooms off a master time clock. Now you're going to be able to put occupancy sensors in every individual room. So when somebody's not in there, we drop the temperature. If the end of the day comes, we shut that room down, but if there's some afternoon school or something going on in a couple of rooms, he can set that all up. So you have effectively 88 different programs based on the zoning in the building. It's pretty sophisticated. And as far as the lighting goes, we're talking about LED replacements, right?
Yep.
Which are the latest craze right now. They've been out long enough to be tested. You just told me it was a job in Plainville that you did that you had how many fixtures?
100
there's thousands. And it's only had like 1 or 2 failures, which are covered under the warranty. So they have perfected the LED market too. The other thing we're gonna do with the school, switching back to mechanical, just so you know, we're gonna put in de-stratification fans in the gym, that high ceiling, to push the air down. So when it gets hot near the ceiling, we'll keep the air near the floor. We're also gonna put one in the several in the library. We're gonna put VFDs, which are variable frequency drives, on the motors, the largest motors in the building, which will increase the electrical efficiency. So there's a combination of, it's a comprehensive project on all three.
I've got 2 large notebooks that I can read, but I don't understand.
That's right. I don't think everybody, I kind of knew where you were going, but I don't think a lot of people do. But I wanted everybody to know, especially people who probably haven't glazed over and fallen asleep yet and might be watching this, what would happen over there, and what we'd be doing.
And there's this, the plan is still to have this done at the elementary school this summer.
That's right.
Yeah, that's why we're.
Yeah, I know, but
I've been.
The longer this goes, the window closes, and we still are able to get it done. Okay.
How long would it take to get it done at the school?
I think these guys can answer that better than I can, but that we're pretty much committed to being done by the end of August with the lighting and anything that needs to happen inside the classrooms. There may be some work that's after that.
Yeah, that would assume we have a contract at the beginning of August.
Yeah.
The fallback,
right.
and the fallback plan is to work evenings.
Yeah.
Even after school starts if we have to. We've done that before in other schools, Cromwell and various other places. You know, if it's the only way you can do it, you go into a classroom, you change the lighting, you clean up, you leave, you come back and do another classroom the following evening. There's not a lot of mess on this job in terms of debris. It's not like a normal construction job. It's kind of like targeted.
Yeah, little things.
So this has to be done when, by August 1st?
I don't think we can get to August 1st, just with the schedule of town meeting and all of the different meetings we have to do. But we will get, we're trying to get as close as we can to that, so that once we have a town meeting and we're approved, we can just go. But it's really, the difficulty has been trying to iron out the details financially for us. And then, and we're just we've got a calendar crunch. And I'm not sure we're gonna meet it, but I think it's worth trying.
The engineering to get this $77,000 from Eversource wasn't easy. There's probably about $30,000 to $40,000 of engineering work that we provided at no cost. It's part of what we do. So the town would, if they had hired an engineer and an architect, we've been spending probably more than $77,000, which is the incentive on this job. So that's the beauty of this program. You have a contractor who's also the consultant, approved by the utility, pre-approved by the utility, and then the utility does the quality control. So they go in and check the job and make sure that it's according to their specifications, right?
So, the ball's in your court, sir.
Yeah, I would like to recommend that we move this contingent upon Board of Finance approval. We move this to a town meeting to be scheduled as soon as we can after we get confirmation from the Board of Finance. All those in favor?
Aye.
So we're going to approve the project amount of $282,046.79 to be presented to a town meeting for the entire project. That's the only thing we have to approve.
No. We have to send to, well, no, let's decide what I said, whether it fits into a no or yes. We need to get approval from the town to enter into a borrowing. The borrowing amount is the number you just called.
But that's what
it's a 10-year borrowing. So we will need to get authority to repay this loan, which is not currently in our budget. And that dollar amount would be $2,825 a month times 12, which puts you what, up closer to $35,000 to $36,000 a year. So So we would need to get authority to enter into a note and to change our budget to reflect the debt payment.
Which is our monthly payment total?
Well, it's, per year, it will be exactly that. This first year, it will be.
Very good, very good.
This first year will be.
Very good, the first year will only be something less than that.
About 18,000 or so.
It will be less than half because we're already into the first year. It really will just be, I'm gonna guess, we're looking at March, April, May.
Very good, very good. Very good. We would also, we do not need to, we would also add a line item to our revenue budget. It's not a word, which would reflect the payment from the school of 2222 something, okay? Now, our budget, this is we're not selling our savings, but you will see savings in our fiscal year, okay? Not a lot, but you will see it. Our budget, when we make these adjustments, will not be that because we are not changing our energy line. So our budget expenditures will increase. Does everyone understand the bit of confusion I'm suggesting?
It's confusing, but it is, there are savings there, but the budget will not reflect that easily.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So I will call for the board, I mean, and not to preach, I believe everyone who walks around should do things to conserve energy. This is good for society. I believe governments should take the lead in demonstrating this is good for society. Now that I've made a noble speech, I'm in favor of this, and I encourage the Board of Finance to allow us to go to a town meeting, subject to the agreement coming from the Board of Ed that they will indeed send this to us. So, with that speech, I apologize. Would someone care to accept the recommendation of the selectmen and the Board of Finance can vote on it?
I'll make the motion. Bear with me for a second. I'm gonna be talking with you later, get wording on this one.
Okay, cool. Do I have a second? Second. Do I have discussion?
Can we hear the motion?
No.
Say that again? Oh, you want to make, I was going.
I'll second hearing her motion.
Well, Laurie raised her hand, so whatever the motion is, you need to talk to Laurie.
Well, that's why I'm gonna be talking with you about so I can get it worded. I mean, the approval of the project amount total of $282,4679 with a 10-year borrowing, I have the project, but 10-year borrowing plan. Monthly repayment of the $825.33, and I've got it broken down. The first year will be less since it will not be an entire year. That's going to be part of the discussion, and that this would be subject to DRES administration agreeing to the repayment loan plan, repayment plan.
That is correct.
Do we need to say anything about the percentage of the loan? Is that not necessary?
It's an excellent, the rate.
Well, the prorated, it's a prorated cost. The town hall will be, the payment for the town hall is $299.46. Payment for the library is $298.16, and the payment for the school is $2,227.71.
There was
Well, how about the interest rate?
The interest rate.
How about the interest rate?
I'm sorry.
2.35? was
No, it was 2.77, I think. It might have been 2.74.
Yeah, 2.74.
Yeah, yep,
2.774?
yeah,
That, I believe that is that's
3.774.
3.7.
it's an excellent condition to place upon it.
Yes.
But we should have some play in that number. So we would ask the town to allow us to enter into a note for the number Laurie called out,
Yeah.
at an interest rate not to exceed, anyone can throw in a number, 3%.
Okay, wait a minute, but you're saying it's
Oh,
the repoint?
We've
They're
already
saying
locked
it's-
that in.
Oh, you have already
Yeah,
locked it in?
it's locked that in. It can't go up.
Okay, if you have locked it in, then that is what it is, so.
3.774.
All right, then it's
Okay.
locked. All right.
Okay, so I have that as part of the discussion as well.
Is that your motion?
Got a second,
Yes.
and it has to go to a town meeting for approval.
Yes. We will schedule that as soon as we can, as soon as we can.
Anyone have any now that we have had a first and second, anyone have additional discussion? All right, shall we call the vote? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, it is carried. We will proceed to a town meeting.
Look at the mess you guys made.
It's for the children. It's for the children.
No,
It is for.
this is for everybody,
It is
because
for,
it
it
includes the
is.
library, and it
Correct,
includes...
and it is for society.
Right, that's what he kept saying. That's the one that I said.
Angus says you can take care of this, that's okay.
That is being done, felt with?
Being done,
Okay.
that's correct.
All right.
All right, we have, we can go over our budget, or we can take a few moments and discuss the note that I sent to you on the proposal for the fund balance. Okay. And I'm going to recommend we do my fund balance. I will not chat in any great detail unless you want to. The reason is because I'm not sure it is really worth your time spending too much time looking at this budget that was presented, the financials that were presented to you. So,
You said you had concerns about it.
I do. I do not, well, let's talk about, but the budget is in play. We are what, July 23rd. That is the final number to the year end. There's just lots of numbers that are in play. For instance, if you look on what was sent to you the other day, it says the school still has 160, we have a surplus from the school of $167,000. Those numbers will be gone, okay? You'll see on the highways, there is almost $200,000 of unspent highway funds. Those dollars will
They
be
don't
spent,
exist.
okay?
They've been spent, we just haven't paid the bills yet.
Somewhere in that, yes, they will be spent, there is certainly. So I'm really resistant. There are numbers, I prefer not specific, but some of the salaries just don't make sense on there. I prefer not to start pointing names, but they just don't make sense. I believe there's a bookkeeping other numbers, okay? Let's call your attention to another one that reinforces that I don't think it's time to spend a lot of time on this budget. The fire department has overspent their maintenance, which we as a group encouraged them to do, if you remember, except the number is too high. I believe we need to push back. I just believe there's a lot of numbers coming at year end. They're not all in the right places, and there's more numbers coming in too. So I am resistant to taking your time to go over numbers of which we then say, that's wrong, we need more time.
Well,
Now,
we typically don't meet in August.
that is correct.
I'd like to, if we can just get a better handle on the year end, instead of waiting until September.
That is fine. I don't know.
I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but, I mean, I wasn't comfortable with this budget.
You,
And I don't wanna let it
what
go.
was sent to you, no, you should not be comfortable.
No, that's definitely should. That was not inaccurate.
Yeah, and I didn't get a chance to look at what was sent to us today.
So let's
Plan it to work, so it's hard to.
let's meet those that can be. And, you know, knowing that we plan to take a month off, which
Which we
we
do
all
every year.
deserve, and all
Oh, yes.
volunteer a lot of
Cool.
time. But I'll come in if you want.
It depends when it is, Laura. You know.
It depends on when we get the information, I guess.
Well, this is evolving, you know, I think it's typical for this to happen,
Yeah.
right up into August, you know? So I would expect that at this time next month, we would have everything wrapped up. it certainly should be, because I think the auditors will be back here at the same time. So, it's just a matter of bills catching, bills catching up.
And we'll
they're-
get the numbers to you, Angus and I will work on them, send them to you. If you would like to talk about them, we can make a decision. Yeah, unless you want to set something specifically,
It
but.
might actually be early in September rather than late in August.
Right, you can meet after our select meeting in September, so we go,
Correct.
but we can,
I have gone over this budget. Angus and I have gone over. And we have an idea of what's going to be spent. I believe the number I gave you last month, which indicated that we will have a surplus of about 500 and, last month they said 545. I believe the number could be closer to 560, but it does not, it's not of magnitude to change much. We're getting more exact on numbers. Well, I just suggested to you, we're getting looser, we're getting vaguer on number. I think we're getting closer to some of the numbers. I believe last month's, revenues have come in very, very well. We still have some revenues coming in, but I continue to think 550, 560 as a surplus is in the range of where we will end up. So,
Can I say that our new tax person, Kate Kreider, has done really, really well. We have way less than 1% uncollected.
Oh, and we're virtually
that
virtually
office
in.
has always done well on collection. From
Yeah.
time immemorial, I remember a time when it didn't do well. Kate's done excessively well. I think
working out.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
And I certainly am going to agree with that. Wholeheartedly agree with that. I remind you that we get, this is not a discounting of your company, I remind you we get a tax base from the assessor. We make an assumption that some people will not pay their bills. We assume that, what's the number we, 2%, right? 2% of the people will not pay their bills in the current tax year and will go into receivables and collect the following year, okay? So the number that you're seeing that is virtually right on is that 98% number. But if you then go to the next number, you will see that she has been working very, very hard to collect receivables, and that number is $50,000 or $60,000 above.
Right.
So all, yes to all of the above. So yes, but yes. Cool. All right, now with all that in mind, I want to comment. And anyone will say anything. It is not something we need to do. We're getting pressure from our auditors to develop a policy that says, at your fund balance, what does it mean to you? Why do you use it? How much do you think is acceptable on the low end and on the high end? We have not, since we didn't have any for a while, we did not seem to think there was a need for a policy. I have recommended to you policies that says we will use our fund balance for 3 reasons, okay? We will use our fund balance to, if there's a shortfall in our budget, we will turn to our fund balance, unassigned fund balance to pay for that. If there are things presented to us inter-budget that we think we should proceed, we will turn to our fund balance. And the third reason is that if we can draw upon it to not to minimize our increases, all right? There are the 3 reasons we think we have a fund balance. I have suggested to you that an 8% is the minimum dollar amount of percent of our budget that is acceptable, and it should not go any higher than 12%. While it is, all of us should have savings accounts, there is a limit to how much loose cash, that's a horrible phrase, cash that you should have not working for you, that you should have if your electric bill is too high or your refrigerator breaks, okay? I have suggested to you that number is 12%. With those 2 numbers of 8 to 12, I have said that if it goes below 8%, we need to put into our budget an increase and ask the taxpayers to pay us dollars to get to at least 8% or cut some expenses. And if it goes over 12%, we should put it someplace else. Either give it back to people, or I have suggested funding a capital fund or an interest fund. So they are just, I'm asking you to think about what you're comfortable as on the low side and the high side, and what you might think we would do with something on the high side. We could be accused of collecting too much money is what I am very concerned about on the high side. The surpluses that we have, the one we're estimating now, that will put us, I believe, at about 9.4%. So we're in our range. I'm not sure, you can decide whether it's comfortably in the range or we're in our range, okay?
I think we have to also consider that a part of that was unanticipated state revenue, not tax collected revenue.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is
That's our
good.
surplus this year. We're
That's
able,
our surplus
we're able
this
to
year.
get ourselves to 9%
Yeah.
by virtue of that.
Right, not
It's-
tax
yeah.
collected, and I really think that's important right now.
Yeah.
Well, I encourage you to think that way, that is good. That is good. Yes, we received more money, about $180,000 more from the state.
Right.
I'm suggesting the surplus is about $560,000. So while the state was a major contributor, we were able to control costs very, very well. That is the largest of the reasons. And tax collections came in high, etc. So yes, the state was good to us, surprised us. There are things that we contribute to the surplus, and we've contributed along the way. So yes, there are stewards. There's lots of stewards, but the number's getting big. I just get concerned. We have worried a lot about a low side. We have to start to focus, I think, on the high side as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think we've worked, and I say we as a community, the whole community has worked hard to get ourselves to a spot where we need to be. Lower than where we were 5 years ago with a reserve fund of less than $500,000 was just unsafe. It's not appropriate. I think we are close to where we need to be. We are certainly where we should be. And I don't think we need to focus on that as much anymore. I think we can just really work on, we've made ourselves more stable as a result of this. We can borrow if we need to, much easier now with that fund balance where it needs to be. We can bond where we could never have bonded 5 years ago. If we decide that's the best route to go. But we've put ourselves in a position where we can do that. And as a community, that's as a community, we've all come out and voted for these budgets to help get ourselves to these places. And we've sacrificed along the way. You know, we did a lot of work on our roads, and we've got ourselves back to where we need to be, but we sacrificed a little bit on those roads. And so,
One of the questions you had was who should have the decision-making authority, one board or the other. Personally, I think it should be both. I don't think it should be.
You know, if you remember, the question is, who develops this policy? Selectmen, who are the leaders of the town, or the Board of Finance, who are conceptually responsible for the finances? Or do we need to take it to a public hearing, public meeting? And I agree. I think the solution is all of the above.
I think a public hearing is a great idea to expand the conversation. And we certainly will get, I'm sure, knowing Deep River and most small towns, we'll get a number of different opinions. And that'll be good. I think the final decision, I think that both boards should agree on this. But I also think that it's important to note that many, many towns have this, not all towns. And it is a policy, it is not a law.
It's not a bylaw that we
It's
have
not a law.
to adhere to. Yeah.
It's a policy that we if circumstances prescribe, we can vary from this if we determine, if we being these collective boards, maybe not us, determined to do so.
One of the things in my preamble, which I suggest to you is too long and a bit redundant, to make the decision on 8 to 12 or whatever number we want, we should look at where do we get our revenues. Uncertainty in the state, if it increases, we may wish to move that somewhat higher. I'm going to answer my question, but you should opine on it. I do not believe we are dependent on any one major taxpayer. So if we had one major taxpayer that we were concerned could be reducing operations or something, we might wish to increase that. But I don't believe we do. I think we have a fairly diverse tax base. Someone can say something on that.
Well, we have some major contributors, but not to to the point, like, for example, Chester just lost their tax revenue
Yes, correct.
from Chester Village West. And that was almost a mill that came off, just by them changing. I don't know that we have that. But we might. Whaling does?
Whaling does got it.
Oh, yeah.
And us too, because there's a lot of our employees.
Well, our townspeople will be.
Yeah.
Wayland's been very good to Deep River over the years.
Whalen's
gosh,
been
yes,
good
they
to
have.
many of the communities.
So it is a range that I'm suggesting, a high and a low. These are numbers that just, that high range is lower than what recommendations are. Remember, we've gotten recommendations, the most should be closer to 15 or 16%. So, it again is a place, I get very concerned. I personally get uncomfortable with taking in too much, but it's just a conversation is what I want at the moment, so.
They used to tell me, there was a certain member of Deep River I worked with who used to tell me, we're not in the money-making business, which is true. But neither are we in the overspending business. We're also in the cautious, financially prudent business when you're with the Board of Finance. 8 to 12% is very prudent. It's not too far over. Where I used to be 10 years ago, sitting actually in the Board of Selectmen, listening to your predecessor, John Bauer, talk about the same thing. We're in much better shape than we were at any time I can remember over the last 10 or 12 years. It's a big deal.
Just something to think about as you're sitting on the beach drinking pina coladas.
With 8 to 10%, 8 to 12%.
That is correct. Yeah, we have something to worry about.
That's all.
That sort of exhausts everything I want to go. Anybody have any other items to bring before the board?
Happy summer.
Here, happy summer.
No more 90+ degree days.
Hearing
Yeah,
none,
there you go.
do I have a motion for adjournment?
9:04.
Okay, seconded and no discussion. Thank you, everyone.
Very much.